Welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling, that a moment of just profound anxiety when your whole financial life flashes before your eyes?
hmm
Maybe you're trying to secure a really crucial business loan, or maybe you're just trying to rent an apartment and you know there's this massive unseen entity out there that's holding all the keys to that decision.
And that entity is almost always one of the big three credit reporting agencies. And not just scorekeepers anymore, not by a long shot.
Yeah.
They are, these foundational pillars of our economic access. They're the gatekeepers who determine if you qualify for credit, what interest rate you're going to pay.
Or even, like you said, if you can rent that new place using a service like SmartMove.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really personal really fast.
And what happens when the systems run by these systems built on mountains of incredibly sensitive personal data? What happens when they fail?
Right.
When identity theft leaves you fighting a ghost in the machine, or when a simple error takes years, not weeks, to correct, and you're just trapped in this financial limbo.
That's the real-world consequence of their power. It's immense.
It is.
And that's why today we're taking a deep dive into one of those giants, TransUnion. The listener provided us with a truly comprehensive stack of sources covering this company. And, well, our mission today is to peel back all those layers of its operation.
Yeah.
We need to understand its really bizarre origins. It's a story that begins with railroad logistics and old industrial empires.
What you'd expect.
Not at all. And then we need to trace its explosive growth into this global identity management powerhouse, all fueled by big data and AI.
And crucially, we have to reconcile that image, the image of high-tech ambition, with the persistent legal and security challenges that constantly land them in regulatory hot water.
Yes, we have to figure out how a company that holds the financial profile of 1 billion people worldwide can simultaneously be called, and this is a direct quote, incapable of operating lawfully.
That quote is just staggering.
It is. So let's ground this immediately with some scale just to get a sense of what we're dealing with.
Okay, let's do it.
We're talking about an American consumer credit reporting agency. It's headquartered in Chicago, founded back in 1968.
Right.
As of 2024, the sources show us the financial magnitude of this thing. We're looking at $4.18 billion in annual revenue.
$4 billion.
And they have 13,400 employees. But the real staggering figure, the one that's hard to get your head around, is the data footprint.
The data.
They hold information on over 1 billion individual consumers.
1 billion. With a B.
1 billion. And that's across more than 30 countries.
And in the U.S. alone, they have, 200 million files? Which means they have a profile on nearly every single credit-active consumer in the entire country.
Almost everyone. It's hard to wrap your mind around that kind of volume.
You really can't.
It truly is. And that scale is why their history matters. It's why their technology matters. And it's why their constant legal struggles matter so much.
So I guess our starting point has to be that essential question, right?
Right.
How did this massive entity, formed nearly 6 decades ago, pivot from industrial infrastructure to becoming the gatekeeper for global consumer identity data? And why is that whole transition just fraught with constant legal oversight and operational failure?
That's the core of it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the origins, because the history, like you said, is not what you expect from a credit bureau. This is section 1. From tank cars to credit scores, the foundation and scale.
And this historical nugget is, for me, one of the most fascinating details in all the sources.
Yeah.
Because when you think about the founding of a credit reporting agency, you usually imagine, small-time accountants consolidating local ledgers or something.
Right, a couple of local banks deciding to share information on who pays their bills on time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But TransUnion was born from a completely different kind of corporate leviathan, a totally different world.
So tell us about that lineage. Where did they actually come from?
TransUnion was initially formed in 1968, and it was formed as a holding company.
A holding company for what? Not a bank, I'm guessing?
Not a bank. A holding company for the Union Tank Car Company.
Union Tank Car Company. So, railroad cars, industrial shipping, massive steel containers moving bulk materials around the country.
That's it. A far, far cry from digital credit scores.
What kind of scale are we even talking about with a company like that back then?
Well, the Union Tank Car Company was instrumental in the physical infrastructure of American commerce. I mean, it owned and leased tens of thousands of these specialized rail cars.
So a major player.
A huge player.
Yeah.
And here is where the history connects to massive industrial power. Through that company, TransUnion is a direct descendant of Standard Oil.
The Standard Oil. John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil.
The very same.
Wow. Okay, that immediately reframes the whole nature of this
It
organization.
does, doesn't it?
This wasn't founded by some financial startups in a garage. It's a direct corporate descendant of the original industrial titans that built the American economy. These were companies built on control, on controlling vital physical infrastructure.
Exactly. And you can see it as a transfer of that model of centralized, almost monopolistic scale power.
Oh, so
Instead of controlling the distribution of crude oil via a network of rail cars, they evolved to control the distribution of consumer identity and financial data.
that's a powerful analogy.
It is. The scale of operation that was required to manage a massive fleet of rail cars in the mid-20th century. That's the same corporate DNA that now manages 1 billion consumer profiles globally. It's a compelling historical symmetry.
So once they reformed in 1968, they didn't waste any time pivoting from, steel and rails to data.
They moved with incredible speed and decisiveness. Just 1 year later, in 1969, they acquired the credit bureau of Cook County.
Cook County, so that's Chicago.
Right. And this was an incredibly strategic move. It instantly gave them a massive, ready-made foundational data set.
So they didn't have to build it themselves.
Nope. That one acquisition brought them 3.6 million credit accounts overnight.
3.6 million. Just like that.
Just like that.
So that single move, acquiring 3.6 million accounts, it immediately established them as a serious national plan. It let them bypass the years, maybe decades it would have taken to build a data reservoir account by account.
It was a huge shortcut, a massive one. And as the decades passed, the value of that consolidated data just grew exponentially. You can see it reflected in their ownership changes.
Yeah, talk about that.
In 1981, they were acquired by the Marmon Group for approximately $688 million.
And this is in 1981 dollars.
Exactly. To put that figure in context for 1981, it shows you the recognized immense value of centralized consumer data long before we even conceptualized the internet or mobile banking. The value was already there.
And then the private equity world caught on, right?
Yeah.
They saw the massive potential here, which led to a string of these high-stakes ownership transitions.
Absolutely. The sources list some real heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Madison Dearborn Partners, Goldman Sachs Capital Partners, Advent International.
A big name.
They were all invested in realizing the full value of this data asset. And this whole cycle culminated in TransUnion becoming a publicly traded company.
When was that?
That was in June 2015. They listed on the NYSE under the ticker TRU. This was a clear signal that the company's valuation had moved into the multi-billion-dollar stratosphere.
Now, financially, we need to contextualize them a little bit within the environment they operate in. We keep referring to the big three. Where does TransUnion actually sit in that competitive structure?
They're incredibly powerful, but the sources do confirm that TransUnion is generally considered the smallest of the big three, right alongside Experian and Equifax.
Which probably means they have to be more aggressive to keep up.
It often does, yes. That relative positioning can mean they have to be more strategic, more aggressive in their expansion and their acquisitions just to maintain competitive ground.
But the word smallest here is, it's truly relative based on those 2024 figures you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. A company with $4.1 million in revenue, $667 million in operating income, and $10.9 billion in total assets is hardly marginal.
Not at all.
They are a massive, highly profitable financial engine. Their scale ensures they are a core piece of the global credit infrastructure, full stop.
And with that enormous power comes a corresponding legal responsibility. This is one that every single consumer, every one of you listening, needs to be aware of.
That's the core mandate. It's defined by U.S. law. TransUnion, along with the other two bureaus, is required to provide consumers with one free credit report every single year.
That's the basic social contract, right?
It is. They get to aggregate all this incredibly sensitive data about you, and in return, you have a legally mandated right to see what they are collecting.
That free annual report is the absolute baseline. But as we transition into their modern strategy, we see that TransUnion's business has moved far, far beyond just tracking whether you missed your last credit card payment.
Oh, that shift is dramatic and highly profitable. Let's move into Section 2, the data empire. Expansion beyond the credit score. This is where we trace their evolution from a traditional static report provider into a true predictive data services powerhouse.
Okay, so this strategic shift, it really began over a decade ago with a technological innovation called Credit Vision. That was in 2013. Now, that sounds like a simple upgrade, but what exactly did it change in how they score consumer risk?
It was a really fundamental change in their methodology. Before credit vision, credit reports provided a relatively static snapshot, a snapshot in time.
Right. It just said, here's what this person owes right now.
Exactly. It told a lender, as of this month, this consumer has paid X and owes Y. Credit vision introduced a new concept called trended data.
Trended data. So what does that look like in practice?
Well, instead of just providing the current balance and the status of an account, trended data shows the consumer's financial pattern over a much longer period. We're often talking 24 months or even more.
So it's looking at the trajectory, not just the point in time.
Precisely. It shows, for example, not just that you paid off a loan, but how you did it.
Okay.
Did you just make minimum payments for years? Or did you aggressively pay down the principal? Did your credit card debt spike seasonally, like every December? Or was it stable throughout the year?
So instead of a single photo, the lender gets a full, detailed, predictive film of your financial behavior.
That is the perfect analogy. It allows for much more sophisticated, forward-looking risk modeling.
And the goal is to better predict what you'll do next.
Yes, to better predict future consumer repayment habits and long-term debt behavior. This data is significantly more valuable to their business customers because it allows for this really granular pricing of risk.
Meaning a bank could give a lower interest rate to someone who pays down their balance even if their score isn't perfect.
Exactly right. A bank can offer a lower rate to a consumer who consistently pays down balances, even if their current score is just average.
So this really marks the beginning of their strategic shift into using data not just for reporting, but for actual predictive analysis. But the real evidence of their transformation lies in their acquisitions, which pulled them into completely new industries.
That's the critical roadmap for understanding the modern TransUnion, and we have to start with one of the most significant. The acquisition of TLO LLC back in 2013 and 2014.
TLO.
TLO was founded by a man named Hank Asher, and its proprietary technology, TLOSP, is absolutely central to their expanded data strategy.
The name TLOX sounds incredibly advanced. What does the XP stand for, and what does this algorithm actually do?
Well, TLO guest is often said to stand for extreme processing, and it's essentially an enterprise data fusion technology.
Data fusion.
Functionally, it excels at aggregating massive, disparate, often publicly available data sets. So think property records, professional licenses, utility hookups, vehicle registrations, even social media data.
All these little digital breadcrumbs we leave everywhere.
All of them. And then it uses a proprietary algorithm to uncover non-obvious relationships between these seemingly unconnected fragments of a consumer's life.
So it builds a comprehensive, connected profile of a person that goes way beyond their mortgage balance.
Precisely. It turns all these disparate data points into an identifiable network of you. And here's the profound implication of this acquisition.
Okay.
The sources specify that TLSP allows licensed investigators and law enforcement professionals to access personally identifiable information PII, which is correlated from credit header data.
Wait, hold on. Accessing PII derived from credit header data. That means they are using information that was gathered primarily for financial reporting and then repurposing it for investigative and surveillance-adjacent purposes.
Yes.
Doesn't that fundamentally cross a line from consumer credit reporting into something more like data brokerage and investigative services?
It absolutely blurs that line. TransUnion isn't just serving banks and mortgage lenders anymore. They are providing essential tools for things like skip tracing, fraud detection, and due diligence in completely non-financial contexts.
So by merging their traditional financial data reservoir with PLOX aggregation capabilities, they establish themselves as this core utility in the broader risk management and investigative landscape.
It moves them well beyond the simple FICO score.
And they were expanding laterally at the same time into other huge data-rich markets like healthcare. They seem to view identity verification as this universal service needed across all sectors.
That's correct. In September 2013, they acquired a company called eScan Data Systems. And this wasn't some small side project. They integrated that technology into what became their ClearIQ platform.
ClearIQ. And this is for hospitals.
Yes, this platform helps hospitals and healthcare systems track patient demographic and insurance information.
Why does a credit bureau need to be in the business of tracking patient data? What's the connection there?
It all goes back to their core competency: verification for monetization.
Yeah, okay.
ClearIQ supports benefit verification and post-service eligibility determination. In the incredibly complex world of healthcare billing, hospitals need to quickly confirm who a patient is, what their insurance covers, and ultimately whether they can pay for the services they received.
And TransUnion is applying its deep data processing expertise to streamline that whole crucial verification process.
They're inserting themselves directly into the healthcare payment workflow.
So whether it's verifying your ability to pay for a car loan or verifying your insurance eligibility after a hospital visit, it's the same core data processing function, just applied to massive new revenue streams.
It demonstrates their strategy perfectly. Identity management is sector agnostic.
No.
And from there, they aggressively pursued the digital sphere, recognizing the massive shift toward online transactions and the rising threat of digital fraud.
This involved a rapid series of really focused acquisitions, all aimed at identity and fraud protection.
It did. In 2015, they acquired TrustDev for $21 million. It specialized in digital verification and online fraud prevention for e-commerce.
Right.
Then, in 2017, came FactorTrust. This was a really critical acquisition because it specialized in alternative credit data.
Alternative credit data. Does that mean non-traditional forms of payment history, like things other than loans and credit cards?
Precisely. It means looking beyond the traditional bank credit lines and mortgages to capture data points like your utility payments, your telecommunications payments, or your history with short-term or small-dollar lending.
And that's strategic because it allows TransUnion to build a more complete financial picture, especially for people who might be credit invisible.
Exactly. For consumers who are credit invisible or have a thin file in the traditional system, it also allows them to sell risk profiles that the other two members of the big three might often miss.
And their commitment to becoming this enterprise identity management titan, it really culminated in 2021 with two truly massive deals.
Yes, two huge and very complementary deals. First, the acquisition of Sontiq, which included IdentityForce, for $638 million.
And what was their focus?
That acquisition focused squarely on identity security and identity theft protection products that are marketed directly to consumers. So this strengthened their consumer-facing products.
But the truly staggering investment that year was the $3.1 billion acquisition of Neustar. That's a multi-billion-dollar bet on a completely new enterprise data platform.
Neustar was the absolute game changer. It significantly expanded TransUnion's enterprise data capabilities, particularly in linking identities across multiple channels online, mobile, physical.
So connecting the dots.
All of them. Neustar was a powerhouse in digital marketing, customer intelligence, and contact services. This acquisition meant TransUnion was no longer just reporting on your debt. They were now selling businesses the ability to identify, target, and communicate with you across all platforms with extreme accuracy.
That really solidified their transformation, didn't it? It turned them from a credit bureau into this end-to-end global enterprise identity service provider. They're selling predictive power and verification certainty.
And this expansion wasn't just through buying giant tech companies. They also innovated around specific consumer behaviors to expand the whole universe of reportable data.
Like in the housing sector.
Exactly. Take housing. This is where they integrate elements of your daily life right into your financial profile.
How did that start?
In 2014, TransUnion commissioned an analysis that confirmed something pretty beneficial for consumers. Reporting rental payment information could positively affect credit scores.
Especially for people with a limited credit history.
Especially for them. And this led directly to the launch of a product called Resident Credit.
So Resident Credit makes it easy for property owners, for landlords, to report tenant data timeliness, amount paid directly to the credit bureau.
Exactly. It's an elegant way for them to expand their reportable universe. It integrates housing history, which is a fundamental indicator of reliability, into your financial report, broadening the data available for risk assessment and creating an entirely new data flow for TransUnion.
And they facilitate the actual checks for landlords, too, using products like SmartMove.
Right. SmartMove is the consumer-facing monetization tool for this market. It facilitates credit and background checks specifically for landlords, and they often partner with property management platforms to do it.
So it's an efficient way to verify a potential renter's identity and financial stability using TransUnion's own consolidated data assets.
It's a closed loop.
This aggressive expansion, all fueled by these strategic acquisitions, it quickly outgrew their previous branding. The sources note a massive rebranding effort in 2023 to try and unify all these disparate services.
It was absolutely necessary. I mean, the sources state they had to unify thousands of existing B2B products. It was getting too complex. So they bundled this new offering into 7 cohesive business lines, all built around the true prefix.
Okay, let's break down what those prefixes actually represent strategically, because this is really where that huge Neustar acquisition manifests.
It is. So we have TruValidate. That's their identity verification and fraud prevention suite. It uses the advanced digital tools they got from TrustEv and Neustar's digital linking capabilities.
Okay, so that's security. What about true audience?
True Audience is clearly geared toward marketing and advertising. This is the core Neustar integration. It allows businesses to create these highly accurate, targeted consumer profiles for advertising across all channels.
And true contact.
That manages customer contact information and communication strategies, also built on the Neustar Foundation. It ensures businesses can reach their customers reliably and securely.
And then there are the others, True Vision, True IQ.
Right. True Vision, True IQ, True Empower, and True Lookup. They round out the suite, focusing on things like data analytics, business intelligence, and consumer credit self-management tools.
This entire suite, it just demonstrates that TransUnion is selling far, far more than just a credit score. They're selling integrated predictive identity services for fraud, marketing, and verification on a global scale.
And that global scale is expanding constantly. You see this in their international deal flow, like the intention to buy the UK-based CallCredit Information Group in 2018 for $1.4 billion.
A huge deal.
And the massive $560 million deal in 2025 to buy a majority stake, 94% in their Mexican arm, TransUnion de Mexico. The ambition is it's purely global data dominance.
That synthesis is crucial. They've leveraged the original industrial scale of their Standard Oil lineage and applied it to modern data aggregation. They are innovators in AI and identity management. But this brings us to the profound disconnect that's highlighted in the sources.
Exactly. What's so fascinating here is the persistent legal storm. This massive technological ambition and global reach are constantly undermined by operational failures at the most fundamental level of consumer data management.
Right.
And that brings us to Section 3, the regulatory storm, which shows us that managing this massive data scale comes with huge financial and legal risk.
So let's start with the cost of just simple error and inaction, because the sources provide some staggering examples of what happens when this massive automated system fails to perform its most basic duty, fixing a mistake.
The first case is foundational, and it's a chilling one. The Judy Thomas case from 2003 in Oregon. Mrs. Thomas sued after spending years, literally years, trying to correct inaccuracies on her report. She was eventually awarded a truly stunning $5.3 million.
$5.3 million? What was the core failure that led to a verdict of that size?
It was the operational negligence over such an extended period of time. The sources state it took TransUnion a devastating 6 years to remove incorrect, damaging information from her credit report. 6 years. For a consumer, 6 years of inaccurate reporting means being blocked from mortgages, denied affordable credit, or even being denied employment opportunities. The judgment was awarded not just for the economic damage, but for the profound emotional distress and lost opportunities caused by this systemic bureaucratic failure.
That just highlights the utter helplessness consumers feel when they're trying to battle an automated system that seems incapable of course correction.
And it wasn't a one-off incident. The Sloan case in 2006 involved a victim of identity theft who spent 2 years trying to correct erroneous information with the agencies.
2 years is still an eternity when your finances are on the line.
It is. And while TransUnion and Experian settled out of court, the plaintiff, Mrs. Sloan, went on to win $351,000 against Equifax. The attorney's quote in the sources is so telling. He said, "She wrote letters. She called them. They saw the problem. They just didn't fix it."
They saw the problem. They just didn't fix it. That's not about an isolated data entry error. It suggests a systemic prioritization of automating massive data flow over the necessary human-driven process of dispute resolution and accuracy correction.
That is the crucial insight. Their systems are clearly designed for efficiency and massive scale processing, but they seem to lack the necessary operational competence, or maybe the institutional will, to handle the one-off, complex human disputes effectively, even when a consumer's entire financial life is at stake.
And beyond just operational error, the regulators also targeted their monetization tactics, specifically around deceptive and concealed fees.
Yes, this involved numerous user complaints related to a lack of transparency. Many consumers complained that they were unknowingly signed up for a concealed $17.95 per month recurring charge.
How did that happen?
It happened when they initially tried to check their credit score or access a specific report. And this practice of luring consumers into costly, unwanted subscriptions is what drew the heavy hand of the federal government.
Which brought in the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, leading to that landmark CFPB fine in 2017.
This was a highly public and severe penalty, TransUnion and Equifax were jointly fined $5.5 million and then ordered to pay $17.6 million in restitution to consumers.
And the CFPB's stated reasons were damning. They said they were deceiving consumers about the usefulness and the actual costs of the credit scores they sold.
Right.
Wait, deceiving consumers about the usefulness of the scores. How did that work? What does that mean?
Well, the fine stemmed from the fact that the scores being heavily marketed and sold to consumers were often proprietary educational scores. They were sometimes called Vantage scores.
Okay, so what's the problem with that?
The problem is that these scores were not the actual FICO scores that 90% of lenders, banks, and mortgage companies rely on to make their real-world lending decisions.
So consumers were paying a monthly fee for information that had very limited practical value in the actual lending market.
Exactly. The CFPB argued they were lured into these costly recurring payments with false promises about the score's utility.
So they were essentially monetizing consumer anxiety, selling people a tool they believed was essential for getting a loan, but that tool was, in reality, functionally useless for that specific purpose.
That's a clear violation of trust.
It is.
And the regulatory pressure forced them to make mandatory operational changes. In 2015, following a settlement with the New York Attorney General, all three bureaus were compelled to agree to operational improvements,
What kind of improvements?
including using trained employees to respond when a consumer flagged a mistake.
They literally had to be legally forced to deploy qualified human personnel to properly resolve consumer disputes with lenders.
Yes.
That just underscores how much regulatory muscle is required to ensure even basic fairness in the system.
And the resulting flood of complaints confirms the severity of the operational issues. In 2018, the sources cite that credit bureaus received the most complaints of all companies filed with the CFPB.
The most. Out of every company.
The most. Out of all consumer complaints across the entire financial spectrum, 34%, more than a third, were directed squarely at the big three. That is a massive percentage of consumer frustration focused on this one single sector.
But the most severe legal challenge, the one that really underscores the true gravity of data failure in our modern surveillance environment, relates to national security lists.
This is where the tension between their role as a credit reporter and their expansion into risk management and investigative services, via acquisitions like TL Oaks, really comes to a head. This brings us to the largest FCRA verdict in history in 2017.
A California jury awarded a massive $60 million verdict under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA. What was the core violation here? This sounds huge.
The damages were awarded to a class of consumers who were falsely reported as being on a government list of terrorists and other security threats.
What?
TransUnion was attempting to provide businesses with a tool to screen potential threats, but their data matching processes were, catastrophically flawed.
Being falsely flagged as a terrorist or a security risk, that's not just an inconvenience. That can have catastrophic, life-altering consequences. It could block you from boarding planes, getting certain jobs, or even opening a basic bank account.
Absolutely. The Fair Credit Reporting Act requires consumer reporting agencies to employ maximum possible accuracy when compiling reports. Falsely linking a consumer to a security threat is perhaps the most egregious violation of that duty imaginable.
The emotional distress alone must be immense.
Immense, and the practical damage is incalculable. This $60 million verdict serves as a staggering benchmark for the operational risk TransUnion takes on when its data systems fail, especially as they move beyond simple credit scores into these highly sensitive identity verification tools.
And the regulatory climate shows no sign of easing up on them. The sources conclude this section with CFPB delivering a blistering statement just a few years ago.
In April 2022, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau made a dramatic public declaration. They stated that TransUnion is, and I quote again, incapable of operating its businesses lawfully.
That is just an astonishing condemnation. For a federal regulatory body to use language that suggests the corporate entity itself lacks the foundational competence to obey the law, that speaks volumes about the disconnect we've been tracking.
It does. Brilliant technological ambition combined with profound operational negligence.
What were the reasons they cited for such a strong statement?
The CFPB cited TransUnion's repeated failure to provide proper consumer disclosures, their repeated failures to properly investigate disputes, and their inability to adhere to previous consent orders they had already agreed to.
So they weren't learning from their mistakes.
The statement implies a corporate culture that places revenue generation through complex new products far above the basic, legally mandated duty of accuracy and consumer protection.
This tension between innovative data aggregation and this constant operational failure, it leads us directly into our final section because a company that holds a billion profiles is also an immense target for cyber threats. Section 4, vulnerability and adaptation, security and the big picture.
A company like TransUnion faces a perpetual security battle, and the sources reveal two major incidents that show very different vectors of attack. One is external supply chain risk, and the other is just basic internal security weakness.
Okay, let's look first at the complex digital supply chain vulnerability. This was the malware redirect incident in 2017.
This was a subtle but highly malicious attack. It wasn't a direct breach of their central servers. Instead, TransUnion's Central American Division website was reported to be redirecting its visitors to malicious third-party websites.
And what were those sites doing?
These sites specialized in attempting what are called drive-by downloads of malware, often disguised as essential software updates, like an Adobe Flash update.
And the actual weak point wasn't TransUnion's own code, but a third-party vendor.
Precisely. The attack was performed by hijacking third-party analytics JavaScript, specifically from a company called FireClick. This highlights a crucial modern security challenge. Your security perimeter is no longer just your own servers.
It's defined by the weakest link in your entire supply chain.
The weakest link in the chain of external vendors whose code, widgets, or analytics you rely on to run your website. And TransUnion's immense scale just amplifies this supply chain risk globally.
Then we have the other side of the coin. The direct internal-facing breach noted in 2022, which involves their international operations, and an almost absurd level of internal negligence.
This was the South Africa ransomware attack in 2022. Hackers, operating under the group name N480SecTU, claimed responsibility for breaching a TransUnion South Africa server.
And what did they get?
They allegedly stole data belonging to 54 million customers, a staggering number, and then demanded a ransom.
54 million records stolen. That is a massive breach. But the detail provided in the sources regarding the mechanism of the breach, that's what is truly shocking, given the stakes.
We have to stop there for a second because this one detail encapsulates the entire problem we've been discussing this whole time.
Okay.
The claim made by the hackers, and it's one that circulated widely, was that the password they used to get into the server was simply the word password. Password.
The company that holds the financial identity of a billion people, that is building billion-dollar AI systems to predict future behavior, was allegedly relying on a server protected by the most basic, utterly negligible password possible.
It defies belief.
It really does.
It is the ultimate operational disconnect. You have state-of-the-art technological ambition, the Neustar acquisitions, the TruValidate platforms, the TLOX processing juxtaposed with security negligence so fundamental it suggests a profound critical failure in basic operational risk management. This one incident dramatically illustrates the danger of internal security weakness combined with the company's massive global exposure.
So bringing all of these data points together, the historical scale, the aggressive acquisitions, the regulatory battles, and these security mishaps, how do we synthesize the purpose of TransUnion today for the listener? What are they really?
I think TransUnion today operates essentially as a dual-nature entity. Track 1 is the traditional consumer-facing entity we all know.
Right.
They market credit reports and fraud protection products directly to consumers, fulfilling their legal mandate to provide access to credit information.
But track 2 is where all the growth and all the complexity lie.
Track 2 is the massive, high-growth enterprise segment. This segment sells advanced big data offerings, primarily built on the foundation of TLXP and Neustar. This means the deep AI-driven identity resolution, the TruValidate fraud services, the targeted true audience marketing tools, and the comprehensive suite of predictive analytics used by businesses across 30 countries.
So they aren't just reporting history anymore. They are actively predicting, verifying, and facilitating consumer engagement across the entire global economy. They are essentially a foundational utility layer for the digital identity of half the planet.
And that's the context we have to hold on to as we conclude. The company born from the industrial scale of Standard Oil now seeks to control the industrial scale of data. The technology is advanced, but the fundamental duty, the careful, accurate, and secure handling of sensitive consumer data, is repeatedly shown in court and in regulatory findings to be flawed at a colossal, financially ruinous scale.
So what does this all mean for us? For the consumers who rely on these systems every single day, this deep dive shows us that the traditional line between a credit reporter and a global data broker is not just blurred, it's practically erased.
Hmm.
TransUnion is leveraging proprietary algorithms and deep AI to predict human behavior and build these hyper-connected identity profiles.
And yet, at the same time, they were fighting massive legal battles, including the largest FCRA verdict in history for falsely flagging consumers as security risks and paying out tens of millions in fines for deceiving consumers about the very scores they sold.
The financial penalties, that $5.5 million CFPB fine, the $17.6 million in restitution, the $60 million verdict, these are the heavy, persistent operational costs of a business model that seems to prioritize complex technological expansion over fundamental accuracy and security.
The sources really paint a picture of a company that's expanding its technological capabilities faster than it can manage its basic, legally required responsibilities.
And that leaves us with a critical, ongoing question, something for you, the learner, to carry forward from all this.
Given the repeated and costly failures in data accuracy failures that took one consumer 6 years to resolve and led the chief consumer regulator to call the company incapable of operating lawfully, and you combine that with their aggressive, continuous expansion into highly sophisticated predictive data products like TLOXP and TrueValidate,
Right.
how confident should a consumer be? How confident should you be that the immensely complex systems designed to manage, protect, and verify your identity are actually being managed legally, securely, and with the utmost accuracy? The tension between that incredible technological ambition and the shocking lack of operational competence is the defining feature, the secret life of this credit reporting giant.
A compelling and necessary thought to end on. The stakes couldn't be higher. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.